Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to give thanks for the life of Ellen Hawkins, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. On behalf of Victor and Leslie and Jennifer, I want to warmly welcome you all here today. I'm Colin Smith. I'm Ellen's son-in-law. I know that a number of you have traveled to be here today, and some of you have traveled a great distance to be here today, and we sincerely appreciate that and all of your support, and your being here really matters to us. Before we begin, the family's asked me to warmly invite you to join us all downstairs after the service for a reception, and we hope you all can stay. As you may know, Ellen was a great adventurer and lived abroad for most of her adult life, returning to Canada about 7 years ago. And today we'll hear from a few people who know quite a bit about some of those adventures. Ellen also chose the hymns that we'll be singing today, and we'll begin by joining in with hymn 461 as printed in the bulletin, the first 3 verses, "Be Thou My Vision." Please stand and join me. Be seated. And first, I'd like to invite Leslie to come up and say a few words, please.
Thank you so much for being here. My mom was an incredible woman. She was complex as she lived in the mundane and the extreme, both in life and in character. She was a housewife and a world explorer, a mother and a community leader, a teacher and a published writer, and while small in stature, she was mighty in character. She was kind but firm, loving but definitely a disciplinarian, funny but serious, conservative but liberal. While she studied as a nurse, she had a gentle, caring demeanor that came so naturally to her. She had a calming influence on me and became the voice inside my head. She was a doting caregiver, so when I was young, I had very high fevers that would lead to convulsions. Mom would douse me with cold water to keep the fever at bay to avoid another convulsion. Every time I got a fever, even as a teenager, she would jump into action. Once I became a mother, she became my personal telehealth. She was my first phone call every time the kids were sick, and she would coach me through every situation. And growing up, I loved to swim. I was a fish, as Mom used to call me. Mom never learned to swim as she was afraid of the water. And yet, she spent hours sitting in the edge of the pool playing a game with me. I would close my eyes and she would toss a coin into the water and I had to go and find it. Hours and hours of enjoyment for me, and while I assume she was probably bored, she did it anyway with the kindest smile on her face. She was a devoted guardian. When we moved to Montreal, she took French lessons while we were at school so she could help me with my homework. For 1 hour every day after school, and there was no missing every hour, she would help me learn through workbooks of how to learn French. She was home every day when we got home from school. I admired her for the sacrifice, as I think she longed to be out exploring and not making dinner for us every night. She was an accomplished creative. She helped me with my first marketing project at McGill. I needed to create a campaign for rutabaga, which is a kind of turnip. She helped me create a character called Raleigh Rutabaga, the mascot for the root vegetable. We had a lot of fun, although I must admit, I don't think the professor gave me a very good grade. She never ceased to amaze me. I had no idea that she was taking notes the entire time we were in Indonesia, nor the profound effect that that posting had on her until years later when she produced Jinxed, which you can see downstairs. Who knew that she would become a published writer? She was an intense protector. As a teenager, I was not very popular because I had the earliest curfew of midnight, and she would wait for me at the top of the stairs until I got home. At one point, she had skin cancer cells removed, but she didn't want us to worry, never wanted us to worry. So instead, we received an email from Dad after the fact that started with, "Your mom's surgery went well." She was an avid adventurer. She traveled to so many places in the world. She reveled in the unknown, the undiscovered, the uncommon. She wasn't interested in the tourist spots. And yet, she didn't share much about her adventures, likely because it would have caused us to worry. There was a special bond between my mom and I. As her disease took hold and she moved to the home, we spent time just staring into each other's eyes. For me, it was trying to capture every detail, knowing that time was limited. One day, I just couldn't keep it together, and she was so gentle and kind. The dementia faded for that one moment when she consoled me and asked if I was all right. Knowing what's coming doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't help you to prepare when it actually comes, and I am truly heartbroken. But I see red cardinals everywhere. She is here with us and always will be. Mom, I am forever grateful for you as my inspiration, my hero, my best friend, my smile, and my heart. I will miss you forever.
Thank you, Leslie. I'd like to invite Cam Smith to come up and speak on behalf of all the grandchildren, Callum, Fiona, and Jillian.
So yeah, I have the pleasure of saying a few words on behalf of my sister Jill and Callum and Fiona, my cousins. Is this close enough? Okay. How's that? Right, okay. Until our grandparents moved to Canada in 2017, most of our adolescent years were spent basically 10,000 kilometers apart when they were in Chile and we were here. So despite that, however, the impact she had on our life was tremendous and substantial despite those thousands of kilometers that separated us. We would spend lots of time at Christmas and when we could down in Chile, which was a real privilege and a treat. And we have lots of great memories being down there, a few of which I'll share now. We spent lots of time walking around Santiago, getting empanadas for lunch, watching the street performers at the red lights, watching the stray dogs, which we don't have here. We enjoyed visiting the country club with our grandparents. We'd be in the pool, being fish, of course, eating papas fritas when things went well. And then we'd move away from Santiago and we'd go hiking. We'd go to the beach. Our grandparents took us to all these beautiful locations. And we'd try and keep up with Grandma as she walked, and the rest of us ran. And she was a much better walker than all of us, and much faster, and highly motivating, and always promised great views of the ocean and beach and other things that would come, and those never disappointed. When she came to visit us, when our grandparents came to visit us for Christmas often, if we weren't going down there, of course, the Canadian climate at Christmas is a little different than Chile in the summer, you can imagine. That never stopped Grandma. She would come, she'd go tobogganing with Calum and Fiona. She'd come up north and go hiking and snowshoeing. Didn't know what she was doing, but God, she was good at it, and she never complained once. And that is a true sign of the character she had and the time she spent enjoying it with us. Every year at Christmas, she would sew us, personally, by hand, custom-made pajamas. All four of us. Now that in itself is a massive accomplishment. She did that every year. We, as you can see, are growing. Some of us, I hope, still. The ever-changing body types, she still somehow managed to get that right she must have been taking her measurements at night. I don't know what she was doing. She found a way. And that was amazing. And the pattern of the pajamas evolved every year to our hobbies. Calum and I often had sports. It was what an amazing gift she gave to us every year as that, and that's something we'll never forget. It's truly like just an amazing memory that we all will always have, and of course, wear. When they moved to Canada, when our grandparents moved to Canada in 2017, it was great that it was a drive instead of a flight to see them. That was really great. She always had such a keen interest in our lives, our hobbies. She wanted us to hear about our day, our trips, things that happened. But of course, as we all know, she was an amazing storyteller and writer. And listening to her was something I know all four of us all really enjoyed as well. She instilled confidence in us, just ensured that we really had what we needed to move forward. She really helped shape us into who we are today. And we will miss her tremendously. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Remaining seated, please join me in the Lord's Prayer as printed in the bulletin. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. We now have a video from the Santiago Writers Group that Ellen was a part of for many years and that they kindly sent up. And I'll ask Lisa to tee that up, please.
I need thee every hour, most gracious received me with infinite kindness and wisdom. And when it was time to move on to different countries, there was no leaving you after you moved so gently yet completely into that part of my heart where the trickle of time is harmless to memories and the pain of loving remains sharp. You are forever that secret place where souls magically overlap and the watercolors of their landscapes flow into each other's edges. You, graceful writer and fierce dancer, are forever light on your feet.
Ellen invited me into the world of writing. It was a space whose philosophy was all about drafts and the willingness to keep trying. It was a space where egos were set aside, like it or not, and that aspect of it may have been the most important thing. I owe a substantial portion of my life to Ellen.
I didn't know Ellen at all well, as I only took part in a few Thursday morning sessions with her before she left back to Canada. But she has stayed in the Santiago Writers Group as a constant quiet presence. The group ethos at its best gives us her image, focused, friendly, sharp, disciplined. Her way of doing writing, giving good, strong feedback, sharing tips, throw the cat up a tree, is the spirit we try to keep alive without her. Thank you, Helen.
Dear Helen, now that you have crossed the threshold, you can be our muse twice over. Your spirit has always hovered over the table as we write, demanding discipline and economy of words, precise, bare bone. You will allow the poetic venture, even the occasional mystical flaring forth, but it must be austere, untainted with ego, capable of being recognized by a kindred soul. Be assured, we Santiago writers will not forget you. You are present in every jot and tittle we set down upon the page. Thank you.
I am forever grateful that I met Ellen and got to sit at her table, scribbling away with the talented writers in the community she built. Her writing was insightful, intelligent, elegant, and powerful. She wrote perfectly and made it look so easy. I'm so happy that our paths crossed and that we still have her pages so we can hear her words, her stories, and her voice.
So much depends upon a woman, small in stature, large in generosity and determination, eyes luminous in an elfin face. A woman who gathers us around her polished wooden table, a refuge from mundane cares. A woman whose gentle manner thinly veils her excitement and impatience to begin. First word. Her pen moves steadily across the page, drawing words and images from an inkwell. A woman whose soft voice guides us with clarity, encouragement, and always with humility. A literary Mother Superior. Keep going, she says. Don't stop until the end.
Ellen was home for my late in life writer's persona. Under her direction, I found inspiration, motivation, skills, and discipline. Thursdays were sacred, and I didn't dare arrive late. Her stream of consciousness scribbles on the first word were often humorous, even wild, showing me how to loosen up the pen in hand and take off in flights of fancy.
Ellen taught me so much about being a writer. She also taught me life skills. She was a wonderful woman. I heard we share a favorite composer, Beethoven. So this is for you, Ellen. May you rest in peace.
What I remember most about you, Ellen, and admire, is your sense of discipline. And I'm speaking in the present tense because you'll always be present with us. You are and have been part of our group, at the core of our group. And you've been there to guide us and to encourage us whenever we've flailed. So we're going to miss you tremendously.
None of us would have written anything without Ellen. She had a way of mentoring, encouraging, and prodding us forward. With enormous tenacity, she forced us to work, to prune and mold our words, and her small frame could barely contain her hurricane force of character. When Ellen left in 2017, I was sure I would never write again. How could we carry on without her? But we do write, and we do get together, and we still study our craft, because we are the school of Ellen.
God bless me now, my Savior, my Savior.
The Santiago writers have published a book of their works, which Ellen contributed to, and Victor's asked me to let you know that there are a number of copies downstairs that will be available at the reception. If anyone is interested in a copy, please help yourself. Jennifer, I think you're next.
I'm not so tall. Firstly, I just want to thank all of you for being here today to remember my mother and for supporting our family. We really appreciate it. It's good to see so many people in person and so many familiar and supportive faces, and thank you to everybody who's joining online as well. My mom was loving, determined, creative, as you heard, and great at solving problems. She was sometimes a reluctant leader, but once she built her confidence, she was unstoppable and became a leader in her community, and she lived in many communities over the years. I wanted to share a little vignette about my mom from when I was young and we were living in Bogor, Indonesia, a small town about 90 minutes from the capital, Jakarta. There was a very small expat community there, and as my friends and I got a little older, the challenge of where to go to school became an issue. And so, to bring this to life and also to share her talent as a writer, I want to read an excerpt from her book, Jinxed, in a chapter called Learning Curve, and I quote, "Someone mentioned the distance to Jakarta, the expense, the dangerous road. Time for my little lunatic speech. We've finally heard from head office. We'd hoped they'd send out a teacher for Jennifer, but we certainly got that wrong. But they've offered to pay for the materials if I teach her at home. They recommend a company in London." I took a breath. So, in the absence of any real alternative, that's what I plan to do. I know it isn't ideal. I'd rather Jennifer be with other children, not at home alone with me. So I was wondering, I geared up, how it would be if I took the oldest kids from the playgroup and set up a school at my place. They could all be enrolled in the program if you wanted, or not, depending. Whoever wished to be, I mean. I'm not a teacher, so this is an utterly harebrained idea. What was I thinking? End of quote. I think this gives you a sense that despite her lack of experience, she was willing to jump in with both feet and figure it out. She was always determined to come up with solutions, especially for things that were important to her, like my education. And personally, a highlight for me is remembering the effort that she put into making that schoolroom in our house. She had 6 little rattan chairs that were about this high made and an even smaller table. And I remember going with her to the place that made the chairs. She also made the posters on the wall and colorful and clear, and she painted numbers on the floor, and on the posters I remember it was something to do with Charlie Brown and Snoopy and Lucy. And she taught me how to count. She took bundles of 10 matchsticks and tied them in elastic, and then the individual ones, and I remember her teaching me how to count. And as Leslie said, as my mother, she was warm and doting. As my teacher, she was firm and clearly in charge.
And so we all had to call her Mrs. Hawkins, including me. And she was a gifted teacher, and I am grateful for all the knowledge that she shared with me. After 2 years of teaching in our house, she was approached by the community to set up a larger school, given the growth of people living in Bogor. And she accomplished that and taught a class. And it was a major effort. And actually, the picture behind me is from that larger school, not the schoolhouse in our house, or the schoolroom in our house. And I can just say that Leslie does not look particularly happy that day. That's her at the front of the class to be heading into school that particular day. I'm extremely proud to say that my mom's legacy lives on. From that spare bedroom converted into a classroom in our house, the school is still actually going strong and now is called the Intercultural School of Bogor, offering the International Baccalaureate, or IB, program. The school is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Mom, I am grateful for your love, strength, creativity, and ability to overcome obstacles, and your drive to give me a strong start to my life and education. I'm proud and thankful you were my first teacher. You taught me so much, both inside and outside the classroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Please stand now and join me in hymn 814, Morning Has Broken. Please be seated. As some of you know, Ellen was a ferocious Scottish country dancer, and there's a lovely tribute to her from the St. Andrew's Society in Chile, which touches on that. Lisa, thank you.
Dear Victor, Jennifer, Leslie, and families, greetings from Santiago, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this memorial for Ellen, sharing about her role in our St. Andrew's Society. It's really difficult to talk about Ellen without bringing Victor into the picture, because they were both so much part of everything related to the society and its events and happenings. However, if we talk preferences, for Victor it was always clearly golf, and for Ellen, on the other hand, it was dancing. Although never on the committee, Ellen was permanently involved in the running of the things. You never needed to ask her, generous with her time, she was always there.
ready with a helping hand, a brilliant solution, or a quiet suggestion, or simply making us laugh when we were stressed out. Among other things, she produced our quarterly newsletter with interesting and amusing tidbits of information related to Scotland. She started our Cayleys and was the heart and MC of them, directing every bit from mind, interlacing dances, singing, reciting, pipers, and any other activity drummed up for the evening with an enviable precision and assurance. For the Caledonian Ball, she was in charge of the main decoration. Every year, she took it in hand to hang the banners and flags in the pattern she liked best, transforming a simple gym into a marvelous ballroom. Together, we would do the fix and mend, which was to revise all the flags, fix the broken sticks, install new thread for hanging, and leaving it all spick and span for the next ball. Anyway, let us get back to dancing. Our society dates back to 1924, but only in 1947 did the dancing begin. Practices were held once a week for about 3 months in preparation for our annual Caledonian Ball, using 16 or 17 reels, which we repeated each year, with small variations as the ball included about 12 of them. This was the picture until Ellen took it on to teach us, leading the Wednesday evening dance practices at the Prince of Wales Country Club. She was petite and spunky, and we all admired and respected her quiet and controlled way of teaching. Her whispered instructions would oblige even the more boisterous members to calm down to be able to hear the instructions to the dancers. Very soon, our practicing for Caledonian Ball extended for more months, just for pleasure. First from March until the Caledonian, then from after the Caledonian through to November, when the heat made us break off for the summer month. For each Caledonian, Ellen prepared a small group of the more advanced and self-assured dancers for a demonstration dance that looked impossibly difficult when performed, to the awe of all the spectators. She was always on the lookout for something new and mesmerizing. When the demonstration dance became too much of a burden for those dancing it at the Caledonian, given the tension and responsibility they felt, Ellen had the bright idea of transforming it into a distraction dance, just as perfectly done, but without the added stress. This later became the Chieftain's Invitational, which added a certain glow to it. The end result was the same. The huge difference was that it opened a window of opportunity to all the rest who never even thought they could be part of the dance team or learn the dance. She made us love to dance and to become curious to explore new figures, as opposed to being petrified of spoiling it for the eightsome by going wrong. Our dance repertoire went from 16 to 60 reels, strathspeys, jigs, and hornpipes, in which we all participate today joyfully. Ellen has left us an undescribable legacy. Her beautiful smile, words, steps, and instructions live on in those she taught, and I, who now do the teaching, find myself keeping up the standard of looking for new dances, and often wonder how Ellen would teach a particular reel. I have missed her and Victor since they both left for Canada, and will continue to miss her and him. Thank you, Ellen. You are now free to dance in the heavens, and I hope you will keep us a space in an eightsome there. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Victor.
Thank you. How do you put almost 60 years of marriage into a few pages? You can't. I've always believed that there is something preordained in Ellen and I meeting each other. Certainly that little cherub with his bow and arrow was part of it. But instead of one arrow, I think he emptied the quiver. Ellen appeared at the rugby club get-together on a Saturday evening in October 1964, having missed her boat to Ireland. My declaration that I could marry this unknown, beautiful woman who had just entered the room. Conversing with her at her host's house later, and discovering that there was a mutual attraction. The first date, a dark night, pouring rain, each of us at different corners of the same block, unseen from the other. Panic. Finding each other to our great joy. The dash to the theatre. The smell of my drying woolen trousers enveloping us in the warm theatre. Ellen's decision to postpone her travel. The non-proposal, a simple, I take it we're going to marry. The smile and the confirmation with a kiss. We were madly in love. We felt complete when we were together. The fact that we had only known each other for a few weeks didn't matter. That love and that feeling of completeness stayed with us throughout our marriage. We married in March 1965 and soon left for Portugal, where I had been posted. Unexpectedly, some months later, we were sent to Switzerland, where we spent 2 happy years. Switzerland was good for us, as it allowed us to leave our backgrounds behind and deal together with our new life in a new land. We lived in a very tiny village, not far from the German border. And it was there that I discovered at first hand Ellen's love for adventure. I wanted to buy a cheap second-hand car so that we could see the country. Ellen felt that since we were in Switzerland, in early winter, we should ski. We couldn't afford both. So, you guessed it. We got kitted out for skiing. Ellen later spied an advert for ski classes run by the Swiss Ski Federation. We were very new to Switzerland. We didn't understand the language. The ski buses left at 6 a.m. from a nearby town, so we had to get a very early train to get there. And a minor detail, I had never skied before. We signed up. And it was an adventure. Ellen loved it. And after my painful learning period, we both became capable skiers. I worked long hours in Switzerland, leaving Ellen alone for much of the day. But Ellen was never a great one to sit around doing nothing. So she first took up knitting, making matching ski sweaters for us. They're on one of the videos. Then it was tufting carpets. When the company saw the quality of her work, they asked her to make carpets for them to use as displays. She worked so hard at this that she sprained her wrist, then trained herself to use the other hand. After Switzerland, we continued our travels, such that from an early age, our children were much more familiar with airports than buses. We were professional nomads, never knowing where or when the next posting would be. Ellen was a wonderful companion through all the moves. She never complained. I think that she considered it one great adventure. She was flexible, resourceful, could adjust to the local situation, and made friends wherever we went. Ellen, however, never lost that sense of adventure. No matter where we were, Ellen always took the opportunity to travel to see places that interested her. In Indonesia, she heard of a tribe of people who buried their dead in holes in the cliffs, then fashioned small replicas and placed them on balconies on the cliffs as a form of memorial. They lived in Borneo, which was very undeveloped at that time. So with a friend, she flew to Borneo to see this group, taking buses as far as she could, then walking, sleeping on the floor of the house of the village headman, on the villages, on her way there and on her way back. I must admit, I was quite delighted to see her when she came back. After time in Montreal, we had the opportunity to return to Chile, where Jennifer had been born many years before. During that time, Jennifer in her traveling cot was a feature at many parties and rugby matches. Ellen was a wonderful, happy mother who had her own fan club of admirers. We liked the country, the people, and the social life. We made many friends there. But we were now a generation older. So Ellen started a hiking group. We were right there at the base of the Andes, so why not? Ellen would decide where in the mountains they would hike, and she would lead the way. These were not prepared paths, but routes which Ellen had scouted out and committed to memory. The hikes were strenuous, as Ellen, as you heard, was a very fast walker. Her hikes, 2.5 hours up, 1.5 hours down. That was your morning workout. She became a dedicated writer and assiduously studied her craft. You have heard from her writing group and the St. Andrew Society dancers. She was strongly committed to both these groups. She was also very supportive of an organization in one of the poorest areas of Santiago called the La Casa de la Mujer, the Woman's House. This started as a place where abused women would find shelter and grew in our time to include educational help for children, computer training, and a range of other activities for people in that community. Ellen would visit and seek to promote this group at every opportunity she could as one that deserved support from charitable organizations. She was quite successful, as she was in many other areas. Ellen, though quiet and gentle, had a strong will. One day in Chile, she was visiting a friend's farm. I received a call from her, asking if I could come and pick her up, as she had fallen. There was no urgency in her voice, but I drove out to the farm as quickly as I could. She seemed fine. In the car, she explained, matter-of-factly, that she thought she had broken her jaw. At the hospital, they did a CT scan and confirmed that the jaw was indeed broken. The doctors then discussed getting an operation room ready so that they could put screws in her jaw and tie the jaw closed. Ellen would have none of it. She announced that she would tie the small scarf that she was wearing round her head to keep the jaw closed. The doctors initially laughed, then realized she was serious and strongly advised against it. Ellen spent a month with a scarf around her head, feeding through a straw. The next CT scan showed a perfect joining of the broken jawbone. As in other places, when the urge came upon her, she would travel. In one trip up a tributary of the Amazon in Peru, she came back with so many mosquito and insect bites that I thought she would leak if she had a drink. Only a week ago, I found pictures taken of that trip and noticed the very small clearance between the side of the boat and the water level. Sometimes it's better not to know. When Ellen traveled normally, it was using the most economical way possible, as she felt that that way she saw more of the reality of life wherever she went. She traveled widely during her many years in Chile. On long trips, we traveled together. But in 2014, Ellen became ill, which caused us concern. She never got ill. We visited a wide range of excellent physicians and finally received a diagnosis of vertigo. The exercises provided by the doctor seemed to cure the problem for a time. But later it became clear that this was not the cause of her illness. As a result, we returned to Canada in mid-2017. Later that year, Ellen was diagnosed with Parkinson's. The following years were a slow degradation of her body and mind, which she took stoically. Despite that, she never lost her sense of humor or her courage. She never complained about her misfortune, despite understanding what was happening to her and what her end might be. It was a slow-moving tragedy, hard to watch, as this beautiful, gentle woman slowly faded. Throughout our marriage, I was in awe of the many facets of her character that kept appearing. She had a bright, intelligent, inquiring mind. She loved all kinds of music, but particularly classical music. She was an excellent linguist, a wonderful dancer, a person of great courage. Somebody who helped the disadvantaged wherever she went. She was kind, considerate, and loving. A wonderful mother and a loving grandmother. A person with great imagination and resourcefulness. She disliked injustice and prejudice. This unknown young lady blossomed during our marriage into a truly amazing woman. For me, she was a permanent joy. I adored her. I felt privileged to be her husband. And I consider myself blessed to have been able to share her life as her husband. I miss her greatly. The sense of completeness has gone. May she rest in peace.
Thank you, Victor. Remaining seated, please join me in reciting Psalm 23. Despite best efforts on the fifth line, there's an extra along there, so please omit the first one, and we'll joining in. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me along the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup is running over. Surely your goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Before we close with our final prayer, I want to remind you of the reception which takes place downstairs. I also want to warmly thank the St. Andrew's community, especially Reverend Laura Duggan and Lisa Pod, and our organist Thomas Shaddle. Thank you, Thomas. And the staff and community here for their support and assistance in making today happen. And now, in closing, let us pray. Almighty God, thank you for the life of Ellen Carroll Hawkins. Receive her into the arms of your mercy, grant her eternal rest, and let light perpetual shine upon her. And we ask you to give courage, confidence, and faith to those who are bereaved, that we may have strength to meet the days ahead in the comfort of your eternal love. Amen.